So which countries have nukes today? Any guesses who has the most? Because of how secretive the world's governments are about their nuclear stockpiles, we can't be 100% sure on the exact figures. But as of 2021 estimates, Russia has the most nukes with a world-ending 6,255. Hot on their heels, in second place, we have the USA with a considerable 5,550. The other 7 nuclear-capable nations have a lot less, with North Korea owning the least, somewhere between 40 and 50. And though 40 nukes doesn't sound like much compared to over 6,000, that's still enough firepower to completely wipe New York City off the map, and then some. Which makes me wonder, what would it be like if the unthinkable happened and the world really did descend into full-blown nuclear warfare? As a global community, we're currently sat on over 13,000 nuclear warheads. However, this number is a little misleading. Due to disarmament efforts, only 3,000 to 4,000 are actually active, and the rest are decommissioned. This is relatively low compared with 1986, when the total number of active warheads hit a whopping world high of 70,300. Of course, 4,000 nuclear missiles could still do a pretty hefty amount of damage. If even a tenth of them found their target, the loss of human life would be catastrophic. And not just from the explosions and radiation, from huge firestorms too. Yeah, as if nuclear weapons weren't bad enough. At Hiroshima, all the individual fires caused by the explosion amalgamated into one terrible tempest of flames. Hot air rose and created burning hurricane-strength wind that turned inward towards the fire and fanned it. This made it rage even harder, destroying everything in its path for almost 4.5 square miles before eventually dying out. One apocalyptic theory, called nuclear winter, claims that if enough bombs went off, thousands of these furious firestorms would burn their way across the globe, kicking up hundreds of millions of tons of smoke and ash as they did so. This would form a thick belt of particles encircling the northern atmosphere, plunging our world into darkness. Lack of sunlight would cause dramatic falls in temperatures and destroy much of Earth's vegetation and animal life. With crops failing, animals dying, and cities and infrastructure destroyed, surviving humans would be left in a cold, irradiated wasteland, and the dark clouds could remain for a whole decade. In other words, it wouldn't be very fun. Hold on though, before you go and spend your life savings on a fallout shelter and 1,000 tins of beans, you should know that we're probably not heading toward Armageddon anytime soon. Mankind has possessed the power to destroy itself since the end of World War II. Despite this, no nuclear weapon has ever been used outside of a test since 1945. Why? Well, nuclear warfare doesn't benefit anyone. If one country launches a nuclear attack on another, the defending country is likely to launch a counter-nuclear attack in response, and both parties would be sent to their doom. We call this mutually assured destruction, and it's not ideal. This worked pretty well during the Cold War, but today it's a bit more complex, with countries around the world developing blisteringly fast hypersonic missiles. Conventional defense systems just won't cut it anymore. Not only do hypersonic missiles fly faster than a mile a second, they're also more maneuverable than their ballistic counterparts, making them supremely tough to defend against. Even so, mutually assured destruction still applies. The US, Russia, and China are all developing the technology alongside a number of other countries. Because of this, ironically, an attack is far less likely than if just one country had the power. Okay, I know that's not the most comforting thing to hear, but hey, weapons of mass destruction aren't very comforting. I guess that's why you never see any cuddly nuke toys in kids' stores. Anyway, the modern world is much more focused on using nuclear energy for constructive uses than the destructive. In fact, about 10% of the world's electricity is now nuclear. And that's a good thing. It doesn't pollute the atmosphere, and it's about 10 million times more efficient than burning fossil fuels. Nuclear research has also helped doctors in the fight against cancer, allowing them to predict the amount of radiation needed to kill tumors without damaging healthy cells. We even use radiation to kill harmful bacteria. In this way, a massive amount of heat energy is produced that increases exponentially in just a fraction of a second. And it's all reliant on reactions in the nucleus. Nucleus, nuclear, get it? It's the basic process that powers all nuclear weapons, and most nuclear power plants use it to generate electricity too. However, just to throw a spanner in the works, there is another way of creating nuclear energy, called nuclear fusion. This is much more powerful than fission and is used to power hydrogen bombs. Here, instead of splitting atoms apart, they're fused together. Fusion only works with small atoms, like hydrogen, the nucleus of which contains just one proton. Naturally, two hydrogen atoms repel one another because they're both positively charged. But if the force repelling them is overcome, and they're impelled to fuse with one another, creating a bigger atom and releasing a huge amount of energy in the process. So, how do you overcome the powerful force repelling the atoms and fuse them together? Well, you need to compress them into as small a space as you can so they're more likely to collide, and blast them with an absolute butt-ton of heat. This way, they're not only closer to one another, but the heat makes them move faster. And when I say a butt-ton of heat, I mean at least 180 million degrees Fahrenheit. Ooh, spicy. For comparison, that's almost 7 times hotter than the sun, which also runs off nuclear fusion. Because of the immense gravitational pressures at the sun's core, about 200 billion times greater than the atmospheric pressure here on Earth, atoms are crushed so close together that it doesn't need to be so hot for fusion to occur. On Earth, however, we need to make up for the lack of pressure by ramping up the heat. And you know what generates a lot of heat? Yeah, nuclear fission. Therefore, hydrogen bombs, otherwise known as thermonuclear weapons, explode using the heat from a fission reaction to kickstart a more powerful fusion reaction. In other words, when a hydrogen bomb goes off, it burns 7 times hotter than the sun. Whew! Okay, if you're with me so far, give yourself a pat on the back. Now we know the basic reaction powering the bombs, but how do the bombs themselves actually work? Let's start with the fuel inside them, which is either uranium-235 or plutonium-239. These are both radioactive metals, meaning their atoms have unstable nuclei. An unstable nucleus has too many neutrons or protons inside it and will eject them to try and become stable. This is called radioactive decay, and it produces energy in the form of radiation. Atoms with unstable nuclei are also easier to split with nuclear fission, hence why they're used in nuclear weapons. Now, Little Boy's design was very simple. The bomb had 2 separate pieces of uranium-235 inside it, the plug and the target. Upon detonation, several thousand pounds of conventional explosive was set off inside the shell, which fired the plug down a barrel and onto the target. The 2 pieces of uranium smashed together, compressing the atoms close enough to instigate